Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to do an updated review of my net worth for 2023, and I'm also going to talk about where I keep my savings. I'll be looking at different savings and cash management accounts and give you some thoughts on the ones I've personally used before. I've actually made a video about my net worth about a year and a half ago, which I recommend you watch if you're new to the concept of net worth. There are timestamps in that video, so you can skip to the parts about what it is and why it's important. Those two sections are pretty short, so please go back and watch it if you need a refresher because I won't be explaining the concept of net worth and how to calculate it and all that in this video. I'll just be launching straight into my personal net worth. I made that video back in February 2022 and I was 25 years old at the time. Now it's July 2023, almost a year and 6 months later, and I'm 26 years old. So how much has my net worth changed in that time? Let's find out. Before we begin, I just want to say, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm very happy to have you here. My name is Lisa, and on this channel, I make content about my personal finance journey and home ownership in Singapore. If you're interested in the average person's relationship to money and consumerism, I hope you'll subscribe. Just a heads up, this is going to be a very long and comprehensive video, so I have all the timestamps linked in the description box below. Feel free to skip around or take breaks, and you can always come back to watch another time. Alright, let's begin. Before we take a closer look at my spreadsheet and the net worth numbers, I want to quickly give some context about myself and my personal situation. I know not all of you watching this video have seen my other videos, so you may not know my background or my history with my finances. To keep it short, here are the major points. Firstly, I'm 26 years old, turning 27 in a few months, and I've been working full-time since 2020. So it's been just over 3 years since I started working and earning a consistent monthly income. Secondly, I grew up quite low income with almost no financial literacy education, so I had to learn all this knowledge from scratch when I started working back in 2020. Thirdly, I graduated from university in 2019. During and after university, most of my savings came from school bursaries, and I also worked part-time all throughout university. Fourthly, most of my current wealth that you'll see in this video came from my late father's CPF money that was disbursed to my family after his passing. I have a video where I talk about this in more detail. You can just watch the first part to get a gist of the story, and it also explains why and how I own a HDB flat at my age. Finally, I am fully supporting my mother who is in her 50s. My mother and I live together in said HDB flat. I also have a younger brother who is currently living with another relative. He's still a student, so he's not working yet. Those are the main points that are relevant to this video. I have other videos on my channel where I share in more detail the various other aspects of my finances if you're interested. Given that this is my situation, I hope this provides some perspective on why my numbers are the way they are. So before you make any comparisons or judgments, I hope you'll understand that there are so many different situations and circumstances that will affect one's financial standing in life beyond one's individual effort and power. With that, let's move on to the next part of this video. If you've seen my first net worth video back in 2022, then you'll know that I'm using the exact same template. I highly recommend you watch that video first for more context on this template and how I use it, but hopefully you'll still be able to follow along. You can find this template linked in the description below. It's within the same Google spreadsheet as my budget tracking sheet. It's a Payhip link, but it's completely free to download, and you also have the option to donate if you want to. Alright, I'll go through my net worth very systematically. I'll look at the main changes I've made to this sheet since 2022, which is over a year ago. I'll go through items that make up my total net worth in broad strokes. And finally, I'll look at my asset allocation. On to the first thing. I have 3 main changes that I've made to my tracking spreadsheet since last year, which I'll go through. Firstly, I've recategorized the groups of calculations for my assets. I have it grouped by liquidity and then by pools of funds that I want to keep track of more specifically, like my retirement fund and my emergency fund. Secondly, I have this table which tracks the percentage change of my net worth every month. Unlike my monthly budget sheet where I make a new copy every single month and save them, I only have one sheet where I track my net worth. So previously, I would just update directly into my net worth sheet without saving the previous month's numbers. So I wasn't able to monitor my progress and see how far I've come. So in August last year, I added this table and started noting down my net worth at the end of every month. And I added this formula to see how much my net worth has increased from the previous month. This percentage only tracks the net worth that excludes my property because that's the number that I care about more, and I explained why in my previous video, but it's mostly to do with the fact that I feel more in control of this number as the value of the house can skew my perception of my net worth quite a bit. Thirdly, I added this table under my asset allocation table where I track the types of investments that I have. This year, my goal was to diversify my investments and look into stocks rather than only investing in ETFs, and I created this table to have an overall view of my portfolios as well as the asset classes I'm investing in. I also created these two charts to make it more visual and easier to look at. So those are the major changes to my net worth sheet compared to last year. Now let's take a closer look at the numbers. When I made this video last year, my net worth excluding my house and mortgage was at 17k. A year and a half later, my net worth is currently at 84k. Just a quick explanation on recent events. The huge jump actually just happened last month when my family finally got the last bit of my late father's money that had been held back by the Public Trustee's office because my brother was still below the age of 21. We received $45,000 in total. With that money, I returned my brother 10k for his contribution to the house purchase back in 2020. I was also able to put aside $11,600 to pay off my study loan and top up about $12,000 to our emergency fund to reach my goal of 30k. I'm also putting aside 10k for a family fund, which I'll explain more about later. If I had made this video just a month ago, my net worth would have been at 50k, which was a milestone that I was working really hard towards. But now with this extra money that has come to us, I'm able to hit many of my goals at once, like reaching my emergency fund goal and putting aside enough to pay off my study loan. I just thought to mention this because I did not get to my current 84k net worth on my own merit or effort alone. It was also because my family got this windfall of cash. And finally, we can also close the chapter on this horrid PTO saga. I don't foresee my family getting any further windfall of money like this again, so from now on, I'll have to put in the work to grow my family's existing wealth. With that out of the way, I'll go through my net worth now. I'm not going to go line by line, I'm just going to summarize each category. You can pause this video to have a closer look at each line if you're interested. Let's start with my assets. Firstly, I have the approximate resale value of my HDB. Last I checked, it was at 290k for a 2-room flat. I do consider the house more of a family asset than a personal one, which is the reason why I have these two net worth numbers, because I don't put too much value in this larger value that includes the house. My personal net worth, this number, which excludes the house, is the one I'm more concerned with. Okay, next in my CPF, I have about 2k in my OA, and that's after 3 years of working and buying a 2-room resale HDB. I have about 9k each in my MA and SA. As for my retirement investments, excluding my CPF special account, I have about 13k across all my portfolios. I'll make a separate video talking about my investments at another time because it's too much to discuss in this video. I have an investment portfolio that is more for longer term savings but not necessarily my retirement, and that has about 6.5k. Again, I'll explain more about this in a later section. For insurance, my whole life plan doesn't have any cash value that I can cash out just yet. For my cash savings, I have about 55k, which includes my emergency fund and my mother's savings as well as my family fund. Then here I have a summary of the sum of my assets categorized by liquidity and also specific groups that I track more often. For my liabilities, I have my mortgage loan and my study loan. It's been the same as last year and I've been making steady repayments. Let's quickly look at this section of the spreadsheet. I go into more detail about this in my previous net worth video if you're interested. I want to highlight these 3 numbers. These are the ratios that I said I wanted to work on since last year. I have made some progress on 2 of them. Firstly, my liquid assets to net worth ratio has gone up from 14% in 2022 to 24% this year, and that's because of the windfall of money from this month. Secondly, my debt to asset ratio has gone down from 66% last year to 51% now. The ideal is less than 50%, so I'm very close to getting there. My net investments asset to net worth ratio seems like it has regressed a lot. It was 38% in 2022 and it's 27% now, and the ideal is actually 50%. But actually last month it was at 45%. It's because my net worth suddenly increased when we got that windfall of cash and I haven't invested that money yet. Not sure if I will invest it at all, but that's something for me to think about later. Here's a summary of my asset allocation. Real estate, which is my house, still takes up the largest percentage of my assets, but I've made a lot of progress on my investments and cash savings. All in all, I'm making good progress. Overall, excluding the windfall of money, I've been slowly and steadily growing my net worth over the last year and a half. I've been working on increasing my earning power by a modest and realistic amount and making regular repayments and savings. As a result, the value of my assets have increased and my total liabilities have decreased. It's not quick and easy work, but it's sustainable. And that's my general philosophy when it comes to increasing my net worth. Slow and steady progress and no hyperfixation on any one particular thing, especially things that happen to be trending. For instance, I'm not going to focus solely on paying off all my debt or on investing only in stocks. Moderation is not very sexy advice, but I found that it is the most sustainable usually. Next, I want to talk about my cash savings and where I put them. This includes my emergency fund, which I track in my net worth spreadsheet, but it also includes savings that I do not put into my net worth spreadsheet. Here is a list of all my various pools of savings. I have my emergency fund, my mother's savings, holiday fund, study loan lump sum repayment, medium-term savings, medium-term sinking fund, YouTube side income, and family fund. My reasoning behind classifying some things as part of my net worth or not is very subjective. My thought process is, if it's money that I know I'll be spending in the immediate future, maybe in the next few days up until a year, then I won't include it in my net worth because I consider that money as part of my discretionary funds, as in it's spent at my discretion. The money is not being funneled to a bigger, more long-term purpose like retirement or buying a future home. An emergency fund also has the larger purpose of being my cash buffer in the case of any emergencies, and I need to keep an eye on how much I have saved in that pool. And also to clarify, I'm not including my investments as part of my cash savings as I see investments as a separate category. My investments are long-term assets for my retirement. So even though some of them might be liquid, like the ones I put in robo-advisors, ideally I won't touch them for decades at least. I won't be covering my investments in this video as it's a topic that will need its own separate video. So coming back to the purpose of my cash savings, for the more short-term goals like getting LASIK for example or going on holiday, the money that I'm saving up for that would not be counted under my net worth because it's money that will be leaving my hands pretty soon in the immediate future. This is how I've classified my different savings groups and it works for me this way. Another way to think about it is that I would rather underestimate my net worth than overestimate it. Moving on, where do I keep these different groups of savings? I'm not the kind of person to just combine all my money in one place, and I like putting each group of savings in its own separate and distinct account. Broadly, there are three main types of savings accounts. My terminology might not be the most accurate, but this is how I refer to them. Firstly, there are regular bank accounts operated by banks like DBS, OCBC, UOB. It also includes digital banks like Trust, GXS, or MariBank. They typically offer fixed interest rates, whether it's 1% or 2% per annum. It might go up or down, but usually every month you'll get the interest rate that they've stated. There are also cash management accounts, typically by investment platforms like StashAway and Syfe. And finally, there are insurance savings plans that function like a savings account offered by insurance companies. An example is Life and -PET. You kind of buy a savings plan with the amount that you want to save, maybe 10K or something, and you get returns on that plan. Typically, but not always, cash management accounts and insurance savings plans only offer a projected interest rate, unlike bank accounts. The interest rates offered are typically higher most of the time, but projected, which means not confirmed every month. There are some exceptions like StashAway Simple Guaranteed, which is a portfolio that offers 3.55% per annum guaranteed interest with a lock-in period of 6 months, or Incomes Grow Capital Ease, which has a lock-in period of 3 years. Also for these accounts, keep in mind that transfers out of these accounts may take a couple days or more. It varies from account to account, but it's been my experience that processing time can be anything from 15 minutes to 3 days for the transfer out to be confirmed. It's not very significant and usually there's no issue, and I doubt that it'll take more than 5 days at most, but I think it bears mentioning because this may affect your decision to go with one type of savings account over another. With that in mind, here are the accounts that I'm using to keep my savings. Firstly, for my emergency funds, currently they are stored in 3 places: GXS Bank, Syfe Cash Plus, and UOB One account. You might not have heard of GXS because it's a digital bank, which means they don't have physical branches that you can go to, unlike DBS or OCBC. GXS is owned by Grab and Singtel and is licensed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, so they are legitimate. But last I checked, GXS is currently only on an invite basis, and so you may not be eligible to open an account with them yet. As for me, I have no idea how I managed to qualify, but I think it's because at the time I was a Grab Platinum member, so maybe I had priority to apply and I could open a savings account with them. When I tried to apply for my friend, she wasn't eligible and she's on the lowest tier for Grab, so that's my theory. My account on GXS is a regular bank account with a fixed interest rate. It also means that transfers to and from this account is almost immediate, unlike Syfe Cash Plus, which is a cash management account. The interest rate for GXS Bank is 3.48% and 3.6% for Syfe Cash Plus. But take note that for Syfe Cash Plus, it's a projected interest rate, unlike GXS Bank. The UOB One account is a regular bank account as well, and I'm currently keeping 6K in it for an account opening promo, where I need to keep at least 5K in it until July in order to get a $50 cash gift. The reason I have 3 accounts instead of consolidating it all in one place is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, GXS Bank only allows a maximum deposit of $5,000. Secondly, I do value the fact that GXS is a regular bank account, especially since I use this account to store part of my emergency funds. So in the event of an emergency where I need cold hard cash immediately, I can easily transfer out these funds at a moment's notice, unlike Syfe Cash Plus, which might take a day to 3 days to process. So I'm maxing out the amount I can keep in GXS Bank and storing my remaining funds in Syfe Cash Plus. My UOB One account is a very recent addition and it's only for the account opening promo. I'm not expecting to get much interest from this account, and to be completely honest, I only opened a UOB account recently so I can qualify for Taylor Swift pre-sale concert tickets this month. Ideally, I don't want to split my emergency funds across too many places, so having 3 separate accounts is pretty overkill for my standards. But once the account opening promotion for UOB ends, I'll probably consolidate my emergency funds in just GXS and Syfe Cash Plus. Next, my mother also has her own savings that I'm helping her keep because you know how older parents prefer to hoard cash instead of putting it in a bank or investing it. So I encourage her to put the bulk of it into something low risk while still earning a decent interest. Not sure if this is controversial, but I do include her savings in my personal net worth calculations because I'm fully supporting her financially and therefore I see it as part of the pool of assets that allows me to continue to support and sustain our lives. In the event of an emergency like the time when I had to buy our resale flat, it won't be my money or her money, it will simply be the family's money. Long story short, it's useful for me to keep track of her savings in the same way I keep track of mine. Anyway, right now I'm keeping it in my StashAway Simple portfolio, which has a projected rate of 3.5% per annum. On my StashAway account, I have the Simple, Simple Plus, and Simple Guaranteed portfolios, which are ultra low risk options for you to store your savings if you're looking for something that offers just a slightly higher interest rate than what the bank accounts typically offer. In that vein, that's why I'm keeping my holiday fund in StashAway Simple Plus, which offers a higher interest rate than the regular Simple account. This was a relatively new offering by StashAway back then in 2022, even before I started a holiday fund. Simple Plus offers a projected rate of 4.6% to 5%. The risk is slightly higher than the Simple account, but both are still considered low risk in the grand scheme of cash management options. Both the Simple and Simple Plus have no lock-in periods, which is good for this purpose because obviously I need to frequently withdraw from this account to pay for travel expenses. If you look at the StashAway website, they do charge management fees for both Simple and Simple Plus, but the interest rate I mentioned is inclusive of these fees. So the net interest rate that you'll be getting is 3.5% and 4.6% respectively. If you recall from my budget, I'm putting aside $400 every month from my monthly salary into a pool of savings that I'm dedicating just for holidays, whether local or overseas. It's a new thing that I started only this year as I'm feeling more financially stable. And because it's money that I'm planning to spend away eventually in the short term, I've not included it as part of my overall net worth calculation. Just a quick note, one thing I've realized since starting a holiday fund is that I should probably start saving up a year in advance for holidays that I'm planning. For example, if I'm planning a holiday in 2025, ideally I should have all the money needed saved up in 2024, and this is for cash flow reasons. Because I just started my holiday fund this year, I've been saving up for a trip that I'm planning at the end of this year. But just because your trip is at the end of the year doesn't mean that you won't be spending much earlier in the year. Most likely, you may have to book plane tickets way in advance to get a good price and hotels and all that. So my cash flow for my holiday fund has been a bit tight because of that. I'm probably going to do a lump sum deposit in the future for my holiday fund, maybe when I get a bonus or something. Fourthly, I'm using StashAway Simple Guaranteed to keep the money that I've set aside to pay off my study loan. As you saw in my net worth spreadsheet, I have about $11,600 left of study loan to pay off by December 2024. But instead of making a lump sum payment to my study loan, I've decided to continue making the minimum $100 monthly repayments until December 2024, when the loan will start to accrue interest. Then I'll make a lump sum payment of the remaining $10,000 to clear the loan. In the meantime, I'll save the lump sum that I've already put away for this loan into StashAway Simple Guaranteed. There's a guaranteed interest of 3.55% per annum with a lock-in period of 6 months. My full loan repayment is still a year and a half away, so I can renew this lock-in period 2 more times to keep earning the guaranteed interest. I think 6 months is the shortest I've seen. I don't usually like lock-in periods, but 6 months is very short compared to other lock-in periods where it's like 1 to 3 years long. For this specific purpose, I think StashAway Simple Guaranteed works great because I don't need the money until I have to use it to make the lump sum repayment, and I'm keeping track of this money and counting it as part of my net worth. Fifthly, I have my medium-term savings, which I actually put in an investment portfolio with StashAway because I'm looking at a much longer time horizon for this pool of money. Even though it's money that I do plan on spending eventually, just like my holiday fund, the main difference is in the time horizon. Unlike my holiday fund, I don't have a specific purpose for this money yet. I'm looking at a timeline of maybe 5 to 7 years, and it could be to buy a bigger family home in the future or some other life goal. I haven't determined it yet, so I'm keeping it open, but whatever the goal will be, I thought that I should at least save some money now for it. I mentioned in my 2023 Money Goals video that I aim to contribute $420 a month into this portfolio. So this pool of money is sort of in between categories of either savings or investments because I see my investments more for my retirement rather than short to medium-term goals, but I'll still include this in my investments when I talk about my investments portfolio specifically. This pool of money is in StashAway's General Investing portfolio with a StashAway risk index of 10%, which is on the lower end of the risk scale. I'll have links in the description with more information on their risk index, and hopefully I'll be able to explain this in greater detail in a future video about my investments. I have an affiliate link with StashAway where you can get up to $20,000 SGD managed for free for 6 months if you're interested. I'll have it linked in the description. Next, I have a pool of money that I call my medium-term sinking fund, which I keep in my DBS Multiplier. It's not counted in my net worth for the same logic as my holiday fund. This pool of money is basically an extension of my monthly sinking fund, which is a small amount of money that I put aside every month for me to spend on fun and frivolous things. Every month, I give myself between $50 to $200 to spend within that month, but I also put aside $200 to put inside this medium-term sinking fund. The reason I have a separate sinking fund is for expenses that come up during the course of the year that may exceed my dedicated monthly budget. For example, if I want to get a new vacuum for my house or concert tickets, I can use the money from this pool of funds instead of taking from my emergency fund. If I exceed my monthly sinking fund budget, I usually top up the difference from this account. I don't move this money out into any special dedicated account, and I just keep it in my DBS Multiplier account. My DBS Multiplier account is my checking account, and that is the main account that I use to credit my salary and pay all my credit card bills. My monthly budget operates from this account. And since this is a pretty temporary store of funds, I don't bother to take it out of my multiplier account. Next, I have a checking account for my side income earnings, which I just call my YouTube account for simplicity's sake. And it's not part of my net worth because money goes in and out of this account pretty regularly, but I thought I would talk about it because of the way I manage my side income. So I don't put my side income in any high interest savings account. Instead, I put it in a checking account under DBS, which they call My Account. There is hardly any interest, which is fine because I'm getting interest from my other accounts, and I value the convenience and simplicity of using this account more than the interest I could potentially get if I were to use other types of accounts. Since it's DBS and it's also a regular bank account, it's easy for people to make payments to this account, and it's easy for me to make regular deposits and withdrawals. This account works because I see it more as a transitory place for my side income rather than a place to store savings. That would be the purpose of my emergency fund or my holiday fund. So regardless of how much I make every month, it all gets funneled into this account, and I give myself a monthly salary every month. That's how I consistently have between $600 to $800 of extra income every month, not because I make that amount exactly every month, but because I'm pacing out the withdrawals. Some months I'm not able to do a lot of side work and I have no side income coming in, but the side income from previous months allows me to continue to pay myself a monthly side income salary. Finally, this is where I'm storing the remaining money from the windfall of cash that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. After paying back my brother, topping up my emergency fund, putting aside money to pay off my study loan, and topping up my mother's personal savings, I'm left with about 10k in this account that I'm temporarily keeping in MariBank for now. Similar to GXS Bank, MariBank is a digital bank as well, and it's owned by the parent company of Shopee. The interest rate is 2.5% per annum with a maximum deposit of $60,000 in the account. As of right now, I think it's still on an invite-only basis. Again, I'm not sure why I was eligible, but I suspect it's because I'm on their affiliate program and I'm also a gold member on Shopee. You would know if you're eligible if you're able to see a MariBank invite banner on your Shopee app. It's a very basic and fuss-free account and I do like it. It's just that the interest rate of 2.5% is not very competitive compared to other cash management accounts that I'm using. But among the basic bank account options, MariBank has one of the highest interest rates. I'm not sure yet what I want to do with this money in order to grow it, so I might or might not invest it in the future. One of my medium to long-term goals is to upgrade my 2-room HDB to a 3-room HDB, so this money will contribute to that goal. And that's all of it. At least the major ones that are more evergreen. I usually have little savings pools for smaller, very short-term micro goals like saving for LASIK last year or saving up to get my driver's license next year. I have a video on my channel that I made last year on how I manage my monthly budget and track my expenses on a daily basis. I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in how I manage all these moving parts. The app that I talked about has since been updated, but I think the principle and thinking behind how I use the app is still useful. I'll link that video in the description box below. I know it sounds like a lot to think about and that I'm doing so many things, but I've been doing this for so long now that it's really like clockwork to me and I can do it without much brain work. There are many other accounts that I didn't mention in this video, but I've used before in the last few years since I've been managing my finances. I'll compile all this information in my budget spreadsheet, which is the same one that I use for my net worth and my monthly budget tracking. It's the one that's linked in the description box below. If you've downloaded it from my previous videos, you can just download it again to see the updated version. So apart from the accounts that I've already mentioned, I've used Standard Chartered Jumpstart before, I've used POSB, Say, I've used Singlife, and Singtel-PET. I'll have many reviews of these accounts that I've used before over the years in the same spreadsheet. Finally, I want to share some of my reflections on this topic to close off this video. I know we've been talking about numbers a lot throughout this video because that's the topic we're discussing here, so I don't know if I've come across as calculative or obsessive about money as a result. But honestly, I've just been living my life, trudging on, responsibly keeping track but not obsessing about the numbers too much every month. I just key it in and move on. To me, slow and steady is the name of the game. In fact, preparing for and making this video has given me the opportunity to reflect on the strides I've made since last year and reassess the direction I'm going in. Am I on track with my goals? Am I going in a pace that I'm comfortable with? I made a video earlier this year on my money goals for 2023, and it's a good time for me to check in on that and see if the goals I outlined are still relevant and meaningful to me now. As I've said in a previous video, I don't think numbers are meaningful in a vacuum. They only become useful when put in context, whether by giving them a purpose or aligning them to your goals and priorities. Remember, numbers are the means to an end, not the end in itself. In that vein, I want to share a quote I came across recently by Karl Marx. The less you eat, drink, buy books, go to the theatre or to balls or to the pub, and the less you think, love, theorize, sing, paint, fence, the more you'll be able to save and the greater will become your treasure, which neither moth nor rust will corrupt, your capital. The less you are, the less you express your life, the more you have, the greater is your alienated life, and the greater is the saving of your alienated being. Chills, I know. Whatever he meant, I'm sure different people will interpret it differently too. At first, when I read it, I wasn't sure what he meant by the greater is the saving of your alienated being. Does he mean a spiritual saving or savings in the literal financial sense? But then I came across another English translation of this quote because the original quote I believe is in German, and the last line reads, "The greater is the store of your estranged being." So I think he meant a literal saving, as in a store or a reserve. But if we're inclined to be more metaphorical, if we read it as a spiritual saving, if he meant a spiritual saving of your soul, to save a being that is alienated, what is the worth of that? What is the worth of that to you? Because for myself, I'm not an ascetic. I don't want an alienated life. I don't want my capital or my net worth to grow at the expense of my soul and my experience of being human on this earth. While I'm here, I want to do all the things. I want to eat, drink, read, go to the theatre, think, love, theorize, paint, make art. And oftentimes to do these activities, you need money, you need to spend. And of course, there is a balance. To indulge to the point of bankruptcy is irresponsible and selfish and unsustainable. But to hoard and save and deny yourself pleasures, that could be just as bad. The less you express your life, the greater is your alienated life. Discernment is key here. Knowing what is worth your money and what isn't oftentimes requires experience. Sometimes you need to make mistakes to know what is the right thing to do for you. I do think our modern life and the capitalist system is quite alienating, undeniably, and the degree of alienation to which we're comfortable varies from person to person. I found that overthinking about personal finance and money can be quite alienating for my soul as well. I don't know if you've had the same experience. To think of oneself primarily from the lens of our financial and economic achievements, how much we are able to produce, how long we work, how productive we are in this very narrow scope and definition. Ruminating about this for long periods of time has always resulted in my feelings of inadequacy, depression, and guilt. And I'm making content on this channel about personal finance, which is a field that can be quite fraught with these issues and expectations. So I do have to constantly recenter myself and remind myself of what my values and priorities are. Anyway, I hope this quote will resonate with some of you. I've been thinking about it ever since I came across it, and it's one of those quotes that I'm going to have to write down and put up on my wall as a reminder of how I want to live my life. And of course, just a disclaimer, I'm taking this quote in isolation as it is presented. It may read differently when read in context of the original text or passage, but that's not how I'm choosing to understand it. So yeah, don't need to come at me in the comments saying that I misunderstood the quote in its true context or whatever. I am aware, but this is how I'm choosing to read it. I'm curious to hear your interpretation or reading of this quote. If you have any thoughts to share, if you know and understand the full context as well, I'd love to hear about it. And that's all from me today. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for all your support. I've linked everything I can think of that's relevant to this video in the description box below, so please check it out if you're looking for more information. I hope you can subscribe to my channel and share this video with a friend if you found it helpful or insightful, and I'd love to hear your comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.